So our webinar hosts and presenters, as I said, include Rachel and myself. Joanne Crick is going to be joining us from the Niagara Community Foundation, and Dr. Liette Vasseur from Brock University, and Paula Barrett, who's the manager of FEED Niagara. So right now, I'd like to ask Dr. Vasseur, Liette, if you would like to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. The partnership that we have created since 2020 has helped a lot in terms of uh, giving us the possibility to discuss the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals. So the UNESCO means the United Nations Educational, Cultural, and Scientific Organization, and we are the main point of UNESCO is build peace in the human minds. And when we look at that, the main focus is related to sustainable development goals. And some are very, very important. And poverty and hunger, for example. We talked a bit earlier this week about human well-being and climate action. So these are very important goals that we all need to be part of. We all have the possibility to contribute. And this is why this partnership is very important to be able to discuss with the community, because my chair being on community sustainability, it's quite important, especially for the Niagara region, that we keep that in mind. So I'm very pleased to be with Joanne and Mary and Rachel and Paula today for this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Liette. And we've done a fair bit of work together. Actually, Rachel, if you could go to the next slide. You may have participated in a couple of webinars that we hosted actually 2 years ago now to take a look at how the Living in Niagara sectors align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And the connector with that is the social determinants of health. And the Living in Niagara quality of life sectors have always been based on the social determinants of health. So for the Living in Niagara 2023 report, which was released about a year ago now, we took a look at how those sectors align. And if you take a look at the Living in Niagara report, you'll see that 2023 version that we've indicated alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. And there are 17 of them. So there's a fair bit of alignment. If we could go to the next slide, Rachel. Now, we have been working really closely for a number of years now with the Niagara Community Foundation. By the way, I see that Suzanne Veenstra from the Community Foundation is here this morning, so welcome, Suzanne. So the Living in Niagara report, we've now issued 6 versions of that report every 3 years since 2008. Community Potential prepares the report, engages the community in building it, and it's always been a community-driven snapshot of quality of life in the Niagara-wide community. It combines data, information, and frontline community expert opinion. There's the key, putting the data into context, because those frontline community expert opinion leaders know what's happening in the community today and where the opportunities are to move forward, to take action. So the report draws an evidence-informed picture of life in Niagara now, points to what is emerging, identifies suggested community action to address issues of common concern. And we work really closely with the Community Foundation in building the report. And the Community Foundation, as you probably know, if you've applied for any grants from them, they encourage organizations that are applying for grants to take a look at how the indicators in the Living in Niagara report align with and/or support and can inform the grant application and their planning. So the other thing is that the Niagara Community Foundation, of course, is here locally, and they are part of Community Foundations of Canada. And Community Foundations of Canada is a strong partner with the federal government in what I call sense making for the UN Sustainable Development Goals in the local community context in Canada. So if we go to the next slide, we can see those living in Niagara sectors. And in each one of them, in the 2023 version of the report, as I said, you'll see where there's alignment with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we can go to the next slide. So you'll see when we show you this graphic of the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them. And the goal is to for these goals to be realized by 2030. So it's a tall agenda. The federal government, through Statistics Canada, has an amazing data hub for evidence to support and inform how Canada is doing with achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in the Canadian context. So today we're specifically focusing on Sustainable Development Goals. Short form is SDGs. Number 1, no poverty. Number 2, zero hunger. And number 17, which is partnerships for the goals. And you maybe thought I would mention zero hunger first. I'm mentioning number 1 as well because we know that the zero hunger goal and the no poverty goal are very tightly linked. So on to the next slide. Strong community partnerships are essential in addressing food insecurity. So we thought it was a really good idea to just illustrate partnerships that are happening in our community to address this topic. We know that 1 in 5 Niagara households, just over 20%, are food insecure. That 18.3% of Niagara children and youth aged 17 years of age live in food insecure households. And this quote is from Niagara Region website, Healthy Eating Food Insecurity page. Taking action on food insecurity requires joining forces to advocate for solutions to improve the financial circumstances of individuals and families. Now, let's move on to the next slide. What I wanted to do here is show you, use this slide to illustrate that there has been a lot of work going on for a number of years leading up to where we're at today with addressing food insecurity in our community. You'll see a Niagara Connects logo there in the lower left-hand corner. That's the prior name of our organization, which is now called Community Potential. And we facilitated a multi-year piece of work to bring more than 100 community partners together, organizations and individuals, to describe food systems in Niagara. And this resulted in 2016 in us publishing this Food Systems in Niagara map. So it was collaboratively developed by people working in diverse aspects of food in Niagara. And the intent of this map is to begin describing how a healthy, secure, sustainable food landscape contributes to Niagara's social, political, and economic vitality. And so it was really an interesting process because for the longest time, I think we thought that graphically we would show this somehow as a wheel with progressive steps. And what the group told us is you can't separate out any of these pieces. They're all intertwined. It's like a spider web with, see all the lines linking the different pieces from environment, growing and harvesting, processing and packaging, distribution and storage, through to waste and disposal. And of course, access is where the work of organizations like food banks fit in. I also wanted to mention here that Rachel's going to post some links actually in the chat pod to some things like Niagara Nutrition Partners. So there's just lots of work going on in our community, and we're zeroing in on the work of FEED Niagara with Paula's presentation she's going to make. Of course, Niagara Nutrition Partners, this is a coordinated entity that brings together food programs being delivered in schools and related community programs. There's the Niagara Food Security Network, care of United Way Niagara, and its work began in 2020. And I remember the day there was a big meeting in Fonthill to gather organizations working in this space. I think there were close to 100 people attending. And that was when United Way brought folks together to say, would you like to form a food security network? And one of the things that the network did, we were really involved in this, is to, so I think we're putting a link up about the Food Security Network and where you can find more information out. In late 2020, several partners, we were part of this, with the Food Security Network, brought together voices of lived experience of individuals experiencing food security in Niagara. So we'll put a link to that document. You may find that it informs your work. And then there's been a fair bit of work to align what's happening in Niagara with the foodrescue.ca work. And that link will go to Second Harvest. They're the organization that spearheads foodrescue.ca. And then the other piece is that Niagara Region Public Health has done some really great work to describe food affordability in Niagara by figuring out the cost of a nutritious food basket. The most recent evidence that they've presented is early 2024. So again, you may all know about this evidence. If not, these links may be helpful for you. And by the way, that's a big part of the role of Community Potential, is to help connect people in our community who are planning for community action with reliable evidence. On that note, I will mention one more thing. Happened to hear on the news late yesterday that Second Harvest, so again, the organization that manages foodrescue.ca, has just released a report about the effects of tariffs on the potential effects on households in Canada. And the report will put the link up to that. I need to send that to Rachel so she can put it in the chat pod. We'll get that out for you. And they're estimating that it could cost Canadian households an additional $1,900 a year if the tariffs are put in that we think are going to be put in. Again, who knows exactly what's going to happen, but that's quite a number. All right, so now we will move on to hear from Paula Barrett, and she's the manager of FEED Niagara. And it's been a real pleasure working with Paula in pulling this webinar together. So over to you, Paula.
Thank you, Mary. I think you did a really good job of framing all the work that's been happening here in Niagara. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about FEED Niagara. The issue of food insecurity remains a pressing concern in Niagara, and it's vital to discuss how it fits into the broader conversation about community planning and improving the quality of life for residents. FEED Niagara is committed to addressing food insecurity by strengthening the regional food bank network through collaboration and resource sharing, ultimately enhancing outreach and impact. Food insecurity is a complex and widespread issue that is generally defined as the lack of consistent access to sufficient nutritious food due to financial or resource constraints. It is a condition where individuals or families struggle to obtain the necessary quantity or quality of food to maintain a healthy and active life. The severity of food insecurity can vary widely, ranging from a persistent worry about not having enough food to meet basic needs to more serious consequences, such as missing meals, reducing portion sizes, or skipping essential nutrients. In its most severe forms, food insecurity may lead to individuals or families experiencing chronic hunger or malnutrition nutrition. This issue is not a distant concern. It affects many individuals and families within our own communities. It is a significant, there's a significant portion of the population. Food security is an everyday reality, impacting not only their physical health, but also their mental well-being and overall quality of life. The stress of not knowing where the next meal will come from or how to stretch limited resources to cover basic needs can have profound and long-lasting effects. Whether it's struggling to make ends meet at the end of the month or being forced to make difficult choices between food and other essential needs such as rent or utilities, food insecurity is a persistent challenge that affects thousands of people right in our neighborhoods. Addressing this issue is critical to ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to live a healthy and fulfilled life, free from the constant worry of hunger. Slide 2, I think you have slide 2 up already. The food system in Niagara is complex and interconnected. Mary did a really good job of explaining that in her graphic. FEED Niagara and its members play a key role in the procurement, storage, distribution, and logistics of food for the most vulnerable food insecure residents of Niagara. There are many different organizations that offer meals or food as part of their programming. But what sets FEED Niagara apart is their mandate is food first. They exist to provide the necessities for those most in need. As direct members of FEED Ontario and affiliate members of Food Banks Canada, they follow a set of protocols that outline best practices for food safety and client services. So slide 3, please. The 10 members are Community Cares of St. Catharines and Thorold, Community Care of West Niagara, Grimsby Community Benevolent Society, Newark Neighbors, Pelham Cares, Port Cares, Project Share, the Hope Center, the Salvation Army of Fort Erie, and West Lincoln Community Care. The 10 food security agencies of FEED Niagara have long supported each other informally, but the unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic underscored their need for a more structured and strategic collaboration. In response to that, they came together under the banner of FEED Niagara to enhance their collective impact. The pandemic served as a pivotal learning experience, demonstrating the necessity of mutual reliance amidst rapidly changing health regulations, severe food shortages, and a decline in donated revenue. During this period, demand for food assistance surged by 40%, the cost of food rose by 23%, and agencies faced chronic shortages of both staff and volunteers. By working together, these organizations were able to navigate the crisis more effectively, reinforcing the value of collaboration. Recognizing the ongoing cooperation would lead to greater efficiency and impact, the agencies committed to a long-term partnership addressing food insecurity across Niagara requires shared expertise, pooled resources, and a shift from competition to collaboration and fundraising efforts. Additionally, this united front strengthens their advocacy, amplifying their collective voice in the fight against poverty and food insecurity. Through this formalized alliance, FEED Niagara is working to build a more sustainable and equitable food system for the community it serves. Slide 4, please. In 2023, FEED Niagara developed a strategic plan focusing on 4 key pillars aimed at addressing food insecurity in the region. These pillars are strengthening FEED Niagara's organizational capacity, collaboratively optimizing opportunities for the region's food security programs, advocate and raise awareness of food insecurity issues throughout the region, and 4, strengthen partnerships with other organizations to connect clients with the services they need where they need them. Slide 5, please. As FEED Niagara moves forward, leadership has identified additional priorities aligned with these pillars, such as increasing food storage capacity, optimizing resource sharing practices, expanding food procurement through strategic partnerships and grants, fostering greater regional awareness of food insecurity, and developing stronger relationships with local food producers and farmers to reduce waste and increase food availability. A centralized theme across all of these priorities is the growing demand for food assistance, which has placed increased strain on the food banks throughout the region. Increasing need requires more capacity and more investment in the storage, logistics, and delivery of food. The increased shared storage capacity will create a more efficient and responsive food distribution system, and this will enable safe storage of larger quantities of food more widely and frequently. This will reduce food waste and ensure that food reaches the most food insecure residents of Niagara more consistently, filling service gaps and improving access across the region. FEED Niagara is also prioritizing the building of relationships with food producers and farmers to recover food that may otherwise go to waste. According to Second Harvest, 46% of food in Canada is wasted annually, with 41% of that being avoidable. That could instead be redirected to feed those in need. Members of FEED Niagara are resourceful and innovative, often on the groundbreaking of new ideas. One example of this is food recovery. Community Care of West Niagara was part of a pilot program that introduced food recovery in Niagara. FEED Niagara members already work with local food producers and sellers to optimize food recovery opportunities, but envision even greater impact with the addition of a centralized storage and coordination that will encompass the entire region and beyond as part of the provincial and national networks. Furthermore, FEED Niagara is committed to raising awareness about food insecurity and advocating for systemic change that address the root causes. As members of FEED Ontario and Food Banks Canada, FEED Niagara not only provides immediate food relief, but supports public policy initiatives aimed at addressing income inequality, poverty, and inadequate access to food. Research consistently shows that food insecurity is largely driven by insufficient income, and it is critical that advocacy efforts continue to press for changes to public policies and social supports that would empower individuals to access the necessities of life. Next slide, please. The increased need for food assistance in the region is underscored by data from both local food banks and national reports. Since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, the food banks have seen a significant rise in usage. While initial increases were seen in larger urban centers, demand is now spread across the entire region, with a median increase of 36% in food bank visits for the past year. This uptick is reflected in the 2024 hunger count from Food Banks Canada, which reported a 6% increase in food bank visits from March 2023 to March 2024, and a 90% increase since 2019. Similarly, FEED Ontario's 2024 hunger report found that food bank visits in Ontario surged by 31% last year and had a 134% increase in usage from 2019. Next slide, please. Local data further highlights these same trends. Between 33 and 38% of food bank users in the region rely on Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Program as their primary source of income. This is significantly lower than the provincial average of nearly 60%. Between 33 and 38% of food bank users are children in Niagara. This is consistent with the provincial rate, which is 33%. When you consider children make up about 20% of the population, you can see that they have a higher probability of experiencing food insecurity. Other trends seen in the demographics are an increase in those who cite employment wages as their primary source of income. This has increased from approximately 20% in 2023 to 23.6%, nearly 1 in 4 food bank clients in Ontario, making workers one of the fastest growing demographics at Ontario food banks. This ties into the number one reason people cite for coming to food banks, which is the cost of living. The economic landscape in Ontario further compounds these issues as increases in housing and food costs continue to outpace income growth. According to Statistics Canada, from early 2021 to October 2024, housing costs increased by 25.1% and rent by 24%. Food prices rose by 24.5% over the same period, making it even more difficult for individuals and families to afford nutritious food. This is taken from the Statistics Canada 2025. The average hourly rates rose by only 16.3% since early 2021. So there's definitely a discrepancy between wages and price increase. The growing reliance on food banks underscores the critical need for coordinated, resourceful, and efficient responses to food insecurity. However, it's important to note that food bank usage is far less than the number of people experiencing food insecurity. Many individuals avoid seeking help due to the stigma surrounding food assistance, often resorting to skipping meals, purchasing less food, or taking on debt before turning to food banks. Next slide, please. Food insecurity intersects with several social determinants of health, including financial instability, mental and physical health challenges, and housing insecurity. Addressing food insecurity requires not only the provision of food, but also the integration of a broader social service. As such, FEED Niagara's efforts aim to connect individuals to resources that address these intersectioning challenges. Next slide, please. Research from the American Psychological Association found that food insecurity has profound implications for physical and mental health. It's linked to higher levels of stress, depression, and anxiety, particularly among families with children. A study from Proof in 2024 reveals a strong connection between food insecurity and poor mental health, including an increased risk of depression, anxiety disorders, and suicidal thoughts. Furthermore, the National Institutes of Health found in their research that social isolation resulting from food insecurity can prevent individuals from engaging socially, worsening emotional and mental strain. In children, food insecurity can significantly impact cognitive development, academic performance, and behavioral health. Research from Chan School of Public Health shows that chronic hunger and poor nutrition during early childhood negatively affect brain development. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found for adults, food insecurity increases the risk of chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. Additionally, research from Proof on healthcare expenditure in Ontario found that health costs incurred by adults increase with the severity of household food insecurity, even after adjusting for other well-established social determinants of health, such as education and income levels. The healthcare cost incurred by a severely food insecure adult in Ontario were more than double that of a food secure adult. The World Health Organization in 2024 further highlights that food insecurity disproportionately affects low-income communities and racial and ethnic minorities, exacerbating social inequalities. The clients seen at food banks are the most vulnerable in our community, the most food insecure. Next slide, please. Our approach at FEED Niagara is grounded in the understanding that food insecurity is not merely a matter of providing food, it is about addressing broader systemic issues contributing to poverty and social inequality. Our staff are trained not only to provide food assistance, but to develop trusting relationships with clients. These relationships often evolve into opportunities to address other needs, such as access to healthcare, housing support, and mental health services, which are critical in breaking the cycle of poverty. Importantly, while the FEED Niagara members work together towards shared goals, the programs and services provided are deeply rooted in the specific needs of their individual communities that they serve. FEED Niagara is committed to a grassroots approach, recognizing that the unique challenges facing different communities must be met with tailored solutions. While FEED Niagara provides a united structure for collaboration and resource sharing, the flexibility of each member food bank allows for personalized service delivery that addresses the distinct needs of the diverse populations within the region. This community-specific approach ensures that the support provided is relevant, accessible, and responsive to the local needs, further enhancing their impact and our collective efforts. Food banks are diverse in terms of not only the populations they serve, but also in the communities in which they serve. Some operate in rural areas supporting mainly families, while others operate in larger urban centers supporting a larger demographic of newcomers or a significant homeless population. The programs they offer will be tailored to the demographic of clients that they are serving. In small rural area, ride assistance to medical appointments or grocery delivery may be offered. In a larger urban setting, daily lunches for those with no fixed address may be an important service. Next slide, please. So what we need to remember as one of the main takeaways from this discussion is that food insecurity is a complex issue that requires a multifaceted, integrated response. Through the work of FEED Niagara, we are committed to working together with other community partners to build a food security system that is both responsive and sustainable, ensuring that individuals in our region can access nutritious food and the support that they need to improve their overall well-being. And the last slide, I believe, has the references.
Well, thank you very much, Paula. That was a great presentation and well referenced. And so that's part of our role here today, is to help support everyone's work with evidence that you can use to build your action planning. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Paula? And just while we're waiting to see if anyone would like to put their hand up, Rachel's going to keep an eye on that, or just ask a question in the chat pod. I wanted to mention that Teresa from Strong Community Neighborhoods has shared that her group has actually done some work to show the linkage between their work and the Sustainable Development Goals, which is really interesting. I'd like to know more about that. And I think in the chat, Teresa was sort of mentioning she would like to see connections around the table, I guess, between FEED Niagara members and the broader group of organizations that are working on addressing food security, and they're part of Niagara. So that's something I think that we can all think about. Are there ways to strengthen that work? And Rachel, do you see anything in the chat pod that is, or any other questions or comments to the forefront?
There's a question from Teresa, who I'll just read it out. Love the mission to strengthen the food bank network. Can you be specific with some of those strategies? Is there room to link the non-official food bank, but food access and distribution models into this network, at least for a Niagara collective conversation table?
I would say that some of that does happen at the Niagara Food Security Network, as FEED Niagara is part of that ongoing conversation overall about the system. Food banks are one part of the larger overall system, and as part of our, the collaboration between the 10 food banks, we do have certain policies and procedures that we abide by in terms of food sharing. It's done amongst the partners. We work together, and we are really reliant upon the generosity of our neighbors for the food that comes to the food banks. And in terms of food recovery, those are happening locally with like I said, with local grocery stores or bakeries or what have you, and those are not FEED Niagara connections at this point. Those are connections that the individual food banks have with donors that are close to them.
So the idea today, I was sort of emphasizing or showing, putting a spotlight on the work that the FEED Niagara Collaborative is doing, is one piece of a broader picture. So if you think back to that food systems map, and so maybe it's time, what this is suggesting to me is maybe it's time for the Food Security Network to host another meeting. I think there was one held earlier in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. I think I wasn't able to attend that one, and I think people were really happy to all be in one room together in person and just making connections on the topic. So maybe it's time to think about pulling one of those meetings together again, because it's connections in the community that help to make things happen so that we can all work together and understand what each other's doing so that we're complementing each other's work.
Leah, go ahead. I see you have a comment.
Yeah, and this is fascinating. I agree with you, Mary, that it's probably timely to think about that, and especially because about Monday when we were doing the webinar on the climate change and health, one thing that we are discussing a lot because I'm part of Sean Kidd's project is especially for vulnerable people. How are they accessing food if they cannot walk, because elderly people sometimes when it's too hot they cannot go outside, and at that point how do they access food when they're already in precarious position? So this is the thing with the number of heat waves that we're getting summertime or the freezing rain like yesterday, how people who are vulnerable can access even the food bank if they cannot if they cannot even go because of the conditions. So I think it's in fact with climate change and especially the extreme events, we may have even more challenges than we currently have. And I'm glad to see that in fact people from different regions and especially also the food bank with the senior circle. That means that we all have, when we talk about community sustainability, we're all part of it. And I think that's important. So thank you for bringing all this information, Paula. I think it's very important, and I'm glad to see all the comments from people.
I see another comment for Paula from Josephina, and she's asking, what is the opinion of FEED Niagara on the increasing number of faith groups offering food to vulnerable groups, such as homeless individuals, newcomers, refugees, recognizing that the work by these community groups is highly appreciated? There is a concern of the unsubtle strings that may be attached to those gifts.
I'm never going to say that somebody providing food to the vulnerable is a bad idea. I think if the need exists, that I'm glad that that the opportunity for someone to get food is there. I know that part of being members of Food Banks Canada means that people who come to the food banks that are part of FEED Niagara are not required to have. There's no means testing to access the food, the emergency food program. I'm not, and that's done intentionally, so that if people are in need, they feel free to come and access the food program. And that's done intentionally so that people are able to do it in a dignified way without any strings attached. How other people run their programs, I'm not in a position, I think, to really comment one way or the other. I just think, that's done intentionally in the food banks that are part of FEED Niagara for those reasons.
So it looks to me as if there's a truth that has held true in all the time that I've been part of this work of bringing people together to collaborate, share evidence, etc., so we can strengthen everybody's work in Niagara, is that just getting together every once in a while and making those connections helps us all to strengthen our work. And I know Niagara Connects did a fair bit of work back between 2010 and 2017 to bring the community together to create something called the Niagara Mental Health and Addictions Charter. And one of the really strong themes that came out of that work was that all the work that's being done towards the goal is important. And when you work together in partnership, it rather than diluting the efforts of the individuals, organizations, and people that are in the partnership, it actually strengthens what everyone is doing. So there's much more to be gained by working together than by trying to work all on one zone. It's just not possible, right? Because especially in this day and age when the needs are so great. So this kind of, to me, this reiterates that theme again. And again, that's sort of looking at the taking the bird's eye view of what's going on in the community. So it suggests to me that pulling together a meeting of the Food Security Network again would be timely. And maybe we can help with that because we're working on the next Living in Niagara report. We're always working on the next Living in Niagara report. So that'll be Living in Niagara 2026. And obviously, the food security topic will be woven into that report because there's such a pressing need and so much activity going on in our community. Rachel, is there anything else that you see in the chat pod that we should highlight?
I see a comment to a previous conversation before from Teresa saying, can we also leave room for the reflection that the official mandates may also be providing barriers to more collaboration and collective impact by community? So something else to be considering.
And in many
I think that's
cases, I think those if there are barriers, it's probably not intentional. It's something again where a conversation, connecting, agreeing to work together within each group's priorities is probably one way to address it. Sorry, Rachel, I interrupted you.
No, I think I was just going to say, I think that's all we have in the chat right
Okay.
now.
So
But we
does
still
anyone
have a
else
few
have anything else to add? I guess as we want to remind you that we will share the recording of the webinar as a piece of evidence on the Niagara Knowledge Exchange. We will also send you a very brief evaluation survey. It will take you a minute maybe to fill it out. Just click through. And if you can complete it, it will really help us to strengthen our work. And maybe on to the final slide where I think it looks like we're going to give you the gift of time here. So you can access the Living in Niagara report at livinginniagarareport.com. And if you'd like to be connected and receive regular updates from the Niagara Knowledge Exchange from new evidence that's been recently added, we send out a regular e-blast with links to new and important evidence that you can use to support your planning. And if you'd like to contact either Rachel or myself, there are our email addresses.